So, after the first assassination attempt, I was certain Trump would win. Suddenly, Kamala was declared the replacement for Biden after a disastrous debate performance. Following this surprise switch, the new cycle began actively campaigning on behalf of the new DNC presidential ticket, Kamala-Waltz. Although the elite political pundits were confident that Kamala would make the best case for progress as the first woman minority president to Americans, the pollsters were forecasting that this would be a razor-thin election, albeit in her favor. That left just enough room for my doubts to fester, especially considering the world of everyday folk social media was fixated on Trump, his consequent assassination attempts, his rally crowd sizes, his days as a McDonald's worker, him behind the wheel of a branded garbage truck, and so on. In some way, I already could see who was most likely to win, barring unforeseen election irregularities. What I haven't figured out yet is why Americans were willing to overlook the watershed prospect of a mixed race female president for putting a felon in the Oval Office. In effort to make the red wave make sense, I'll be reviewing commentaries by both sides of the political aisle and summarizing it before submitting to you what I feel was likely the reason Trump has staged what is arguably the greatest political comeback of the century. If this sounds like something you would be interested in, buckle up. This is the Intrinsic Report, and I'm your host, Martin K. There's no doubt that America is deeply divided, and I wouldn't be the right person to do an autopsy of why this is the case. However, the social tensions are quite evident in the rural versus urban ethos, high school educated values versus high achieving college educated priorities, working class conservatism versus upper class progressivism, men and economy versus women and abortion, Gen Zs for Gaza versus pro Israel boomers, and so on. The factors dividing America, however, in this election were largely in Trump's favor vis a vis the incumbents. The Democrat regime seems to have been leaving a sour taste in underclass groups with every term. Rather than heeding to the tail signs, the Democrats called the lower classes racists, sexist, and deplorables, while elevating the status of the insignificant postmodern non-traditional minorities. Since Obama's exit, the conservative vote has swelled with every consequent election, with Trump notably gaining ground with every ethnic minority demographic across the map. In particular, the Republican voter rolls grew substantially ahead of this election, and not only did Trump seize all the swing states in the just concluded elections along with the popular vote, Trump made gains down ballot in deep blue states, which is a vicious rebuke to how Democrats govern and patronize. Now, the COVID economic quantitative easing policies coincided with sanctions on Russian oil, which together drove the price of goods and services even higher. The Biden-Harris administration has been denying this specific inflationary stress on ordinary Americans. The easiest way to turn people off is to make them think they're crazy when they know they're not. This is largely the reason there's a strong sense that Americans overall trusted Trump with the economy, not for any concrete policy solutions he's put forward, but just talking about it in a way it resonates with the masses. Not only is it concerning that the Biden-Harris administration had lost control of the border, they were telegraphing all the perks they were willing to give to the illegal immigrants: free housing, thousands in monthly stipends, easy pathway to citizenship, blindsiding themselves of the resentment naturalized Latinos and other immigrant groups would have about it. Similarly, the Harris-Waltz campaign focused on demonizing the grumbling racists opposing liberal immigration policies, unaware of the undercurrent resentment brewing among the diverse South American community, which only Trump was articulating. Now, the next one is a little bit more obvious. Trump's motivation to win the presidency was largely in part to clear his name. It likely made him more invigorated to be out there making his case to the American people in a way camera shy Kamala wasn't. It's surprising to me that the charges against him have started being dropped after his resounding victory. The purchase of Twitter gave the undercurrent public an immense vent, to which legacy media and the DNC elite have protested against, demanding social media be regulated. Additionally, the damning Twitter files confirmed the conspiracy theories around biased censorship that had been swirling around conservative online social spaces. It turned out that the Biden Harris administration had indeed weaponized social media platforms against conservative commentators and users. Eventually, following Trump's initial assassination and the political tide turning against Biden, Elon restored Trump's Twitter handle before going on to donate hundreds and millions of dollars to his campaign. Had any of this not happened, the legacy media would have single-handedly decided the election in favor of the Kamala-Waltz ticket, who they largely gave positive coverage. Now, a closer point to that is traditionally, the media had been the government watchdog on behalf of the people. Today, this certainly isn't the case. Well, there's been a concerning trend in America for decades where the people view the mainstream media and public institutions as being out of touch with everyday issues. I feel I should mention this. There's a recent Morning Joe moment live on air where the hosts learned butter was a shocking $7, just seconds after they had mocked a voter for saying they were voting red because of how high the cost of butter was. So they just couldn't believe that this election was gonna be decided by voters who were putting butter over democracy. Anyway, just in this election cycle alone, there was a concerted effort to deny Biden's declining mental acuity with the sharpest attack line. Later, when Kamala emerged as the replacement presidential candidate and the immigration crisis began to haunt her campaign, the internet would be scrubbed off any previous headlines that had boasted her appointment to the role of border czar. When you think of how most media think tanks had been predicting the election outcome, you can clearly see they were either making things up or outrightly lying. I can't say for sure what the actual case is, but the media needs to do some serious soul searching about how much longer they are willing to be the government's lapdog and pay the price of waning influence. Both Kennedy and Gabbard helped to raise the appeal of the Trump campaign among moderate voters who were turned off by the two major party politics. RFK's defection from the DNC camp to initially run as an independent was significant because he would expose how he too was being persecuted through lawfare and public smears by the Biden campaign, giving legitimacy to what was already an increasing public awareness of the motive behind the plethora of indictments brought against Trump. He also introduced a health-focused agenda to the Trump campaign, which was oddly absent in the entire political discourse, given how important it is to Americans that the excesses of the COVID mandates be prosecuted. Gabbard, having served in the Middle East, has been very outspoken of the Democrats' hawkish insistence on funding foreign wars. As a former Democrat and now an independent, her pro-peace message helped to cement the idea that the Trump's campaign would make deliberate efforts to exert America's influence in promoting global peace. Since the Obama era, the Democrats have come out strongly for the LGBTQ. Although this community is barely 1% of the entire US population, Democrats have forced their insistence and inclusion into mainstream society through courts, executive order, and online ostracization. Ultimately, when their efforts were feared to have been targeting the impressionable school children K1 through 12 through the curriculum and other school programs, parents rushed to the rescue. And when the parents' appeal had fallen on deaf ears, the Biden administration had prosecuted them as domestic terrorists. The only way they knew to fight back was elect the one person who seemingly understood their concerns. Sending over $100 million to Ukraine and $50 million to Israel in a single presidential term, while Americans are grappling with high credit card debt, soaring prices, student loan debt, rising house prices, shrinking savings, among other things, is enough to turn everyday folk against their government anywhere in the world. The Biden-Harris administration was routinely getting caught red-handed giving a meager $750 to victims of chemical spillages in Palestine, Ohio, and the wildfires in Maui, Hawaii. Most recently, FEMA walked right into a public scandal when they couldn't meet the immediate needs of the hurricane storm victims in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and Tennessee because they had used up relief funds in relocating and housing illegal immigrants. There's simply no way anything that recent could have been forgivable at the November ballot. Overall, I get the sense that the popular vote in this election was a call to the ruling elite and their think tanks to stop forcing agendas that aren't in the public's favor down the throat of Americans. The warning signs had been there that if elected officials kept ignoring and trivializing the public sentiments, a revolution would come. Like so many others around the world commenting on American politics, I did think there was gonna be a civil war. I had thought that the election would be rigged in the event the indictments and the assassination attempts on Trump failed. I was wrong about it. To even watch Biden and Harris concede to the will of the people while promising a peaceful transition of power is actually quite a relief to someone who had all year, with bated breath, expected all hell to break loose this November. So, to every American watching, forgive me for having so little faith in you. And finally, accept my heartfelt congratulations to the will of the ordinary people prevailing against the will of the powerful. Let me know what you thought was the reason that Trump won the November 2024 elections, and what does this mean for you and America? I've been your host, Martin K. This is the Intrinsic Report. See you in the next one.